And I welcome you back to another deck profile. This one for Mega Evolution. Personally, I have been enjoying this deck very much, and I've actually been racking up wins with it. Played it in a couple of tournaments thus far. Have really only had one or two legitimate losses. One loss being a misunderstanding of a rule by myself and my opponent, which was later rectified. So I thought I'd go over what this deck has in it and tell you a bit about it. So the Alakazam in question is this one. So this Alakazam here is from Mega Evolutions, as I said, 140 HP, the Psychic Draw ability that allows you to draw 3 cards when you play it from the hand. And its powerful hand ability, using only 1 energy, places 2 damage counters on your opponent's active Pokemon for each card in your hand. So I'm just going to tell you right now, this is the only attacker in the deck. And you might be saying, well, Winter, we're heading into the Mega Evolution format. We're heading into the big Mega Evolution cards that hit for massive damage, have huge HP. Like, why are you playing a single prizer deck? Quite honestly, because the deck is powerful. And it has the potential to knock out even the toughest decks. I fought against a Mega Venusaur deck and did win. Now, the trick to this deck is, for each card in your hand, you're dealing 20 damage. So you do have to do math with this deck. You do have to keep cards in your hand. Let's be honest, Iono can potentially be a game killer, or any sort of card that makes you reshuffle your hand. Although if you use your cards right, you can draw the cards you need really fast anyway. So let's get into what this deck entails. And honestly, I really like it. It's a lot of fun, and I can't wait to get into it. So first up, you are going to run 4 copies of Abra. I personally have the Teleportation Attack Abra from Mega Evolution, but any legal Abra really will work. Although I like this one's versatility. So the next thing you're running is 4 copies of Kadabra. Now, I know a lot of decks these days do not really run Middle Evolution Pokemon, and that is perfectly fine. Like, a lot of decks really don't need them if you're using the rare candy and if you want to have the higher speed. This deck really does kind of require the Middle Evolution, because it also has the Psychic Draw ability, allowing you to draw 2 cards when played from the hand. And honestly, this deck can afford to play it. It's kind of like the Dragapult deck, where the Middle Evolution kind of is required as a bit of a draw engine, as a interruption. And if you play your strategy right, you can still have the speed you need to take out your opponent. All right, next, of course, as you can probably guess, is 4 copies of Alakazam. That's just going to stay. As I said, this is your only attacker, but this is really all you need when the deck runs right. So remember, that is 4 copies each of the Alakazam line. Next, we have 3 copies of Dunsparce. Personally, I prefer this one with the Find a Friend ability, because and you just need to pick out a piece from your deck, or even just to look through your deck. And since it's only 1 energy, quite honestly, to cheese out what you need early game, it's really worth it. Next, we have 3 copies of Dunsparce. Now, this is one of your main draw engines in the deck. Oops, see if I can pick that up. So this Dunsparce is the runaway draw one. So once during your turn, you may draw 3 cards. If you drew any cards this way, shuffle this Pokemon and all attached cards into your deck. Now, I would like to point out, this is a soft once per turn. So you can use multiple Dunsparce on your turn. And that shuffling ability, we're going to get into the strategy of that later, but honestly, it really does some amazing things for you when paired with the right cards. And this deck does make it really easy to get Dunsparce back on the field. So next we have 1 copy of Shaman, here from Destined Rivals. This has the Flower Curtain ability. It prevents all damage done to your benched Pokemon that don't have a rule box, which, in case you were paying attention, is every single one of your Pokemon, from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. So, this is actually really amazing because it gets around big cards in the format like Grimmsnarl EX, which deal damage to the bench. Last but not least for Pokemon, we have a copy of Psyduck from the Mega Evolution Blister Pack. You only need one of these. This is essentially your anti Dusknoir card. So its damp ability will stop Pokemon from sacrificing themselves to activate their abilities. So that's the Ditto, that's Dusknoir and Dusclops. So we already have kind of two things that really do not bode well for Dragapult, because Dragapult is honestly your biggest op in this deck. So next we have our stadiums. We have 3 copies of Artisan. I know, we're still using this card from base set. Well, Paldean Evolved, actually. But it's an amazing card. Now, once per turn, I know it's blurry. We're getting there. My phone is not the best. Now, once per turn, during either player's turn, they can search their deck for a basic Pokemon that does not have a rule box and put it onto the bench. So honestly, we're using this to get our Dunsparces back on the field. You can combo this with shuffling it back into the deck and immediately playing a Dunsparce back on your bench, because you always want to have at least 1 on your bench. 2 is better, just so you can keep doing the draw every turn. Because what you want to do is you honestly want to have at least 1 or 2 activations of Runaway Draw each turn. All right, so next what we've got, I'm going to go over our energies. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I've got 8 Psychic Energy. Because our attacks do not use more than 1 energy, I am running 8, which is a little bit more than some lists do, but I also like to be able to draw it if I have to and have a couple extra in the back. So next I've got 1 copy of Mist Energy. Honestly, this is just to throw on one of your Pokemon on the bench to stop it from being targeted by effects and protect an important piece. And then we've got our Ace Spec for the deck. I run Enriching Energy as my Ace Spec. So it provides a normal type energy, and when it's attached, you draw 4 cards. So the strategy using this card, and the reason why it's my Ace Spec, is because we're going to attach this to Dunsparce, draw our 4 cards, then draw 3 more off of its ability and shuffle everything back into the deck. So this is a reusable Ace Spec using that ability. So we can continuously draw our 4 cards. And because our attack only uses 1 energy, we have more opportunity to attach this energy on multiple turns because we can set our Psychic Energy up early. So it's a really powerful card in this deck, and I have had great success using it, and it has pulled my butt out of the fire I don't know how many times. All right, moving on to our items. I've got 2 copies of Strange Timepiece. So this came out in Mega Evolution, and in this deck, it's an absolutely broken card. So this lets me devolve one of my Psychic Pokemon by putting any number of evolution cards on it back into the hand. Now, this Pokemon can't evolve this turn. So the reason why this card is so powerful is because this will let me use this is, let's say that I have a Kadabra or Alakazam that I have evolved already, and I can use this to pop it back into the hand, either so I have extra cards in the hand to power up my attack further, bounced an Alakazam back to my hand, and then played it on my Kadabra in the active spot, then immediately attacked with it. Now, this card says that that Pokemon can evolve this turn. That is perfectly fine. Because, as I said, you want a deck, because I did feel like running 4 was too much. Although I did try it with 4 at first. Next, we have our 4 copies of Buddy Buddy Poffin. And this card is incredibly important because this is going to keep playing your Dunsparces back on the bench. Next, I've got 2 copies of Night Stretcher for obvious reasons. Because this will let me get my basic energy back, this will let me get my Pokemon back, and it just keeps a steady supply of the Abras, Kadabras, and Alakazams. Next, I've got 3 copies of Great Ball, which honestly was a surprise to me when I first looked up the lists for this, but it has ended up being incredibly powerful. So this is actually a really old card that's been reprinted. These ones are from X and Y, I believe Primal Clash, because I just like how the X and Y cards look. So check the top 7 cards of your deck, reveal a Pokemon and put it in your hand, shuffle the other cards back in the deck. So this will let you do some more searching, checking the top cards with as much as you're drawing on back the stuff you want. Next, I do have 2 copies of Rare Candy. So Rare Candy is not as necessary in this deck, let's be very honest, because as out quickly. And so let's be honest, you may not have a Kadabra ready to go, or you could have an Abra that you want to quickly evolve into an Alakazam so you can bounce it back to your hand with Strange Timepiece and then situation. Technically, the deck could run without it, but honestly, I feel better having the 2 copies. Next, I do have a copy. Energy in your hand quickly. It will thin out your deck, and it's going to make it easier to get what you need in your hand. I do have a copy of Counter Catcher because flexibility of the field is important in this deck because, let's be honest, there's going to be times where there's something that's just too big on the field, and you do want flexibility in this deck. And let's be honest, there will be times when you are behind on prizes because this is a single prize deck. Now, this is also good because you can afford to be behind on prizes because most of the decks are forced to knock out 6 of your Pokemon. You potentially only have to knock out 2 or 3 of theirs. So Counter Catcher is great to have for the late game because flexibility, and you might be behind on prizes. For the last 2 of the items, we have a couple of Pokegears because our supporter cards are going to be very useful, and we're going to want to get them into our hands. So a couple copies of these because it's a great idea. All right, moving on to our supporter cards. I have 1 copy of Lacey. So Lacey, let's shuffle your hand into your deck, draw 4 cards. If you have 3 or 4, or if your opponent has 3 or fewer prize cards remaining, you draw 8 cards instead. So this is your late game big hand shuffle. And I have it as a 1 of because having multiple copies is just kind of clunky. It's not needed. Simply because if you're in this position, you're probably a little bit in trouble, but you don't want to really be in this position for very long. All right. And the opposite of that, we have Lily's Determination. This is out of Mega Evolution. You shuffle your hand to your deck, draw 6 cards. If you have exactly 6 prize cards remaining, you draw 8 instead. This is your early game reshuffle to start building up your hand quickly. So having the 2 of these on kind of opposite situations for early game and late game, I think is a great idea. So speaking of flexibility, I have 3 copies of Boss's Orders in the deck because, like I said, you want to move the field around to be able to knock out what you need to quickly. And sometimes top decking a boss is just the way to win. Like I top decked a boss in the last tournament, switched up his Budu, and just knocked it out with like 1 card in my hand. Next, what we have is 3 copies of Tulip. Very important card for this deck. It lets you put up to 4 of any combination of Psychic Pokemon or Psychic Energy from your discard pile into your hand. So this can, honestly, in just 1 move, this can plus you 3 cards in your hand, which is an extra 60 damage, as well as continuously getting your Abras, Kadabras, Alakazams back into your hand. Because as I said, as soon as those hit the board, your opponent is going to try to target them, because those are kill on sight because they know that's the problem. Next, I have an interesting tech card, which will cycle out in April, but I think it's interesting to use for now. Daisy's Help. draw 2 cards, which is not too incredible, but it's really the second ability that I'm looking at. You look at your face down prize cards. So in a single prize deck, it is kind of important to plan out your strategy and know what you're going to do ahead of time. So being able to look at your prize cards early in the game and then rearrange them so that you can get what you need when you need it is an incredibly powerful move, and it's something your opponent may not see coming. Yeah, I remember Town Map back in the day, and I miss it so much. And my last supporter card I have here is another one from Mega Evolutions, which quite honestly, a lot of people get really surprised when they see. They're not expecting someone to actually play this card, because normally this card is not that great, and especially in this Mega Evolution format. But for a single prize deck, this card can be absolutely killer. I'm talking about Lieutenant Surge's Bargain. So you ask your opponent if each player may take a prize card or if you can draw 4 cards. So quite honestly, this card is perfectly made for the Alakazam deck, because either you're going to accelerate your game by getting an early prize, or you're just going to accelerate your game by drawing 4 cards immediately. So either way, it's not a great choice for your opponent, and you're going to be plussing either way. And every time I've played this card in a game against my opponent and my locals, they've been surprised and like, well, geez, they weren't expecting someone to seriously play this card and actually have it work in their favor. So I keep this as a 1 of, because honestly, a 2 of is a little dangerous and it loses the element of surprise. But a 1 of this card in this deck is honestly incredible and has led me to victory several times. So I really do suggest using this card for this deck, not just because the art is fantastic and I love Lieutenant Surge, but because it really can turn the game around or give you that early game lead that your opponent is not expecting. So all in all, that is the deck. I think it's a really cool deck. I've had a lot of fun playing it, and it's really strong. Sorry, I forgot to turn my ringer off. So this is honestly a really strong deck. I have had a lot of success with it. And like I said, I've only really had one legitimate loss, and that was against Dragapult. I was able to get a draw against the Marnie deck. I was able to beat the Mega Venusaur deck. I'm doing really well with this deck, and people are honestly astounded with how well it's working. Now, does this mean that this deck is going to absolutely destroy in every situation? It does not. As with any card game, any deck can win, any deck can lose in the right situation. But honestly, with the speed that Alakazam can draw, and with how powerful its attack is, I kind of see this deck in the coming months becoming a top contender. Maybe not best deck in format, but I can predict it's going to be in the top 10, maybe even the top 5 decks until, someone makes up a really good counter for it. But I see this deck going pretty far because it's been really powerful and I've really enjoyed playing it. And the best part about it is you can honestly build this deck so cheap. As long as you don't go for the special art cards, you can build this deck for incredibly cheap. I mean, this is the most expensive card in the deck. It's $12 to $15. Everything else is pennies. So for maybe $20 or less, you could build this deck. It is incredibly cheap. It is one of, I think, the best decks to come out of Mega Evolutions, and I have enjoyed playing it so much. So that is my Alakazam deck profile for the Mega Evolution set. I really hope you guys enjoyed this. I know that I enjoyed it. I absolutely loved putting together this deck. I have enjoyed testing this deck. I have had so much fun playing it. And it is honestly such an easy deck to build, and you might take locals by storm. Now, that's what we're going to stop here today, because I have told you everything there is to know about this deck for the next set. Obviously, I can't talk about the cards in the set until after it's officially released, but I'm going to be looking at the new stuff in the set, seeing if there's anything to improve this deck, and I'm really excited to see what's going to happen. So until